He is passionate about identifying, developing, and empowering people to function at their highest level. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kamal Seth.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. I know it's a post-lunch session and I would like to just raise the energy of this room as I begin to speak. So if I could ask you to just follow the movement of my hands and free your hands for just a few seconds. Can you show me your hands? Just to make sure that everyone is awake as I am. Okay, now we will start the talk once we can all do a simple activity together. So raise your hands again please. You can wave at me. You can see both my hands. Okay, let's try to do this together as a group. See, that's why it requires attention after lunch. Some people have too much attention. See, are your hands warming up? Thank you. Just to wake you up and wake myself up as well. So, in the last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time in interviewing more than 2,000 students, young professionals, and entrepreneurs. And I see a pattern that I'm going to share with you today. What I heard a lot from most of them is if they had a chance to make different life decisions or decisions about their career, and if they had another life or if they went back in time, there were a lot of things that a lot of people wanted to change. Today, the stories I'm going to share with you is not just about them, but how is it connected to all of us who have a chance to change our present and the future with our actions. So I was preparing for this talk, and I thought, what would be the best way to get myself into it and be very, very, committed to it. And I thought if I just ask myself, if I were to die tomorrow, what would be my message to the world that I would love to share? So the message today I'm about to share with you is how we can create a bigger and better impact on the society if we get to know ourselves better and do what we love. And if we do that, how we can together create a century of wisdom, which means how can we make the 21st century the century of wisdom and not just knowledge. We were gifted 15 years back with a lot of things from the previous century. So we had internet, we had Google, and we had some devices like the telephone. In the last 15 years, technology has enabled us to be connected just like you see here. And we all have in our pockets access to Facebook, WhatsApp, Google. We can be connected to anyone that we would feel like. Even though we have reached this far and we are all connected, there's something which was still missing in this century and perhaps still is. So while the world was busy with the Second World War in the 1940s and the 1920s last year, there's a man in the US called Abraham Maslow. He was busy figuring out what are the human needs that lead people to action. Which means, what do I need as an individual which would get me to act? And this is what he figured out. He gave to the world the Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs. He said, for most individuals, if the basic needs are met in life, like housing, shelter, food, and they feel safe in their environments, the world was not as safe as we have today. There was World War going on, right? So these are the needs he felt that if individuals could fulfill these needs in their life, or they were made to fulfill by the government or the institutions, they would feel more secure. And if that happened, we would move from basic needs to safety, to social connections, to having a self-esteem, and eventually move towards self-actualization. One of the ways to create a century of wisdom would be to move more towards self-actualization. And that is what I'm going to focus on today. So what happens with this is that we as human beings have moved into the generation of technology and social media, but at the same time, we are not really using the wisdom that we must based on all the knowledge that we have today. So consider this. How many of you sitting in this room have a brother or a sister? Please raise your hands. I do as well. Now, how many of you sitting in this room have a brother or a sister who is exactly like you? Two people, I hope you have twins, or maybe they're just like you. Very few of us, or almost none of us. What has happened in the last 15 years is that we are carrying the traditions and the systems of the previous century, which makes a person who is different, like an orange, he or she would have to be like an apple. Because the society really doesn't accept the individuality of that person. And whether it's a corporate system or it's the education system, you go anywhere, it seems that we are carrying a big baggage of the previous century, of the knowledge that we gained in the last century. This is where we are today. There was a survey done for the government of India a couple of years back, and they found out this startling fact. Half the people who graduate in this country are unemployable. This phenomena is so big that it might be as big as a climate change issue, but not many are talking about it yet. So every second person who graduates finishes in a degree, and the world is pushing more and more people to be more and more educated, but not more and more employable. In the US, they did a recent study which proved that the student loans is amounting to more than even the credit card bills of people for the first time ever in the American history. So students are graduating and they are in debt, which means they are required to do the work which they might not have liked otherwise to do. It doesn't stop here. I was coming here and a kid was knocking at the door of my car at a traffic signal, and I'm sure most of you or many of you have been in that situation. Normally I ignore it and I explain my ignorance inside my head, but today I decided to give him a bottle of water. He went quietly to the side of the road, sat there and drank the bottle of water that I gave him, and he just smiled at me. The question I asked myself was, if more of us could think beyond ourselves and our families, we would already start creating a better world. The challenge is that the systems we have built in the last century is not enabling many individuals to think beyond themselves. So we have a lot of millionaires, we have a lot of billionaires, but not perhaps many people who are pursuing what Mother Teresa did, or what social entrepreneurs are doing today, or what you might be doing today if you're watching this talk. So we need to shift from that. And one of the ways that I feel we could shift is by using a knowledge which was done for 76 years in Harvard Medical School, led by Dr. Robert Waldinger. They studied the lives of 726 American men, and they figured out that the most important thing that people cared for and eventually became happy in life were their good relationships. Good relationships made them more happy and more healthy. And that is something which sounds like common sense. Then why don't human beings actually invest more time in building relationships while we are busy chasing the other dreams? Well, it's simple. Relationship building is difficult. It's messy. Sometimes it gets very difficult and we just say, you know what, we want a quick fix or a fast food. But building relationship has been proven to be, in the last 76 years, to be the most important thing that gets people very, very happy. Me and my wife have known each other for the last 7 years. And only a couple of years back we realized that our search for the one was actually futile, because we had found each other 7 years back and we just connected all the dots and we just started investing more in our relationship. My father, I lost him 15 years back, and I never spent enough time with him because he was just so busy, or that's what I told myself. But I ask you today, don't you think all our parents care for us so much? They love us and they want the best for us. They might not communicate it to us, but at the same time, sometimes we see it in their eyes. Spend more time with your parents, because they might be from a different generation, but they want the best from us. Invest in the relationships that matter. It's not just about the money and the fame, but a lot about the relationships that we create in our lifetimes. Energy flows where attention goes. So invest more in your relationships, because the world when you'll be 50s or 40s might not be the same, and we might need a group of people to hug, or people who are there with us unconditionally, because nothing lasts, right? This is knowledge. And coming back to the century of wisdom, the last century I consider was the century of knowledge. We gained a lot of things. There was Einstein, he gave us E equals mc squared, and a lot of things happened. What I'm saying is that we need to move from knowledge to wisdom in this century. And we need to move there as soon as we can, because we continue making the same mistakes that we have in the past. And this is how I feel that we can do it. On the left you see self-actualization. What I mean by self-actualization is our ability to reach our own higher potential. What I mean by capacity to impact is to create a better world with our actions. So if you look at the bottom there, the century of knowledge was 1900 to 2000, and then was the century of wisdom, which is now, and it's already been 15 years. What I believe is that if more of us can get to know ourselves more, we will not only create happiness for ourselves, but we'll also move to the right, wherein we will realize that we can only be happy if people around us are also happy. Not when I live in a skyscraper and then when I go downstairs, there is a suffering everywhere. It does not make anyone happy. So what I'm saying is that by using a very simple knowledge of the last century, we can actually get there. Try talking to someone who loves what they do. You will see a sparkle in their eyes, their excitement in their voice. And then speak to someone else who does not love what they do, and they will tell you that an hour of my work feels like 10 hours. And if you talk to someone who loves what they do, they'll say hours pass by, they disappear. That happens because the ones who love what they do, they are on their self-actualization path, but they have realized that they need to create a better society as well. Imagine Sachin Tendulkar as a child said that, you know what, I'm very good in batting, but I don't want to play for India. I just want to play for myself. It would be a disaster, right? So it's not just about the self-actualization, because it will be meaningless to self-actualize ourselves and be the most successful or the richest person, and at the same time when the rest of the world is suffering. So I ask you today, what are you scared of in this conversation? Are we the people who can move on both the sides and not just on one side? The society is already full of people who are moving on the left side and they want more for themselves and their families. But few people have started marching on both the sides. And those are the people that will create a movement in the century of wisdom. They are the people who realize that their happiness is not just about how happy they are, but also how fulfilled they can be with the work that they do. This is the challenge of self-actualization. When we go on the path on the left of self-actualization and being a best version of myself, failure happens. A lot of people give up. But you know what? Failure is two parts of the same coin. It's like yin-yang. We cannot succeed at what we really want to do unless we are willing to fail at it. And sometimes failure hurts. But that is the only way to truly create an impact and actually create a better society. The other challenge is the understanding of success in itself. A lot of people, especially now that we have entrepreneurship everywhere, people think they'll quit their jobs and they'll be the most successful person by being an entrepreneur, because they think the left is true. As an entrepreneur, I can tell that to you from all my experience, that the one on the right is absolutely the universal truth for anyone who ever wants to succeed. Talk to anyone you admire and they'll tell you the same, that it goes zigzag, it doesn't go in a straight line. So let's create a century of wisdom where people are not just connected by social media and technology, but people who are there for each other, people who want to contribute to the society, and people who think beyond themselves and their family. And by doing so, we will then create a century of wisdom, which is the 21st century, which is what we all deserve. Here's a story I want to share today, which I have not shared with anyone on a public platform. 15 years before, I was told by a doctor that I suffer from partial blindness. It changed my entire life. I was like, how's that possible? For 15 years, I saw everything the way I thought. And I was told that, you know what, the way you see the world is different from someone else. And it has changed my life for the last 15, 20 years. And I live with that fact every day. What that tells me is that we can create a world, a century of wisdom, where more and more individuals get a chance to see the world in their own way. Benjamin Franklin once said, there are three kinds of people. One, who are immovable. The second, who are movable. And the third, who move. The people who actually make a difference in the world that we live in. And it is them that we need to connect, enable, and inspire to create a century of wisdom. Thank you so much.
May I ask a couple of questions, please?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm sure that you are doing things so that people can do what they love. So how has your experience been so far? Like, how has the response been?
Well, I must say in the last 3 years, I love doing events, and as Human Circle, the startup that I created, it's more to spread the Do What You Love movement. So we have engaged a couple of thousand people, and the response we get from all of them is that they don't feel they get an equal chance to be themselves. So the conversation which is missing is that me in a classroom or a family or a system, my growth or self-actualization is hindered because there's too much influence going on. So what they're saying is that I want to be more free. I want the freedom of the mind, and not we are free as nations. So they want the freedom of choice, is what I hear.
And so you were talking about the century of wisdom. What exactly can we start doing today so that we can actually create the century that we've already lost 15 years of? So we can make this a century of wisdom.
I don't think we have totally lost it. I think we can do much better. And the first thing, if I ask myself the same question, what can I start doing when I get off this stage, is something that I feel every single human being in the world can do. Just ask yourself one simple question. Do you feel happy doing what you do today on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday? And just ask why you're doing so. And if the answer is no on many, many days, it means there is time to change, which means have the courage to change something. Because if we spend the best years of our life, and this is a young audience here, then the challenge will be that life will pass by. So the first step for me as a person is to ask, what do I want to change today if I'm not happy? Am I doing what I love, or am I not doing it? If I'm not, then what is the reason? What is stopping me? So that would be my message to start immediately just after this talk.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.